Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to tonight's debate. My name is Cindy and I am chairman, and James Dilmy is the timekeeper. This debate will be judged by a panel of three adjudicators, who is Mr. Amon, Ms. Bibar, and Mr. Wood. This topic of debate is that South Australia no jab, no play policy should be abolished. The affirmative team seated to my right is from St. Paul's College, and the negative team seated to my left is from Westminster School. The speaking time for this debate is 5 minutes, with a double bell at the end of your speaking time. A warning bell will ring once at 4 minutes. A continuous bell will ring 30 seconds after the final bell. I declare this debate open. I call upon the first affirmative speaker, Ridhan Raju.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. The topic for our debate is that South Australia's no jab, no play policy should be abolished. We define the topic as no jab, no play. This policy refers to a legislation introduced in South Australia in 2020 that prohibits children from enrolling in early childhood education and care services unless they're fully vaccinated or have a valid medical exemption. This exemption being the child has a medical contraindication to a vaccine that has such as anaphylaxis, the child has natural immunity to a particular disease, the child is part of an approved vaccine study, the vaccine is temporarily unavailable. All these exemptions are applied through the Commonwealth Medicare system. The term abolished means that this policy should no longer exist. In this debate, we discuss how this policy should be abolished. To clarify, we're not debating the value of vaccines themselves, but rather the fairness and effectiveness of excluding children from early education as a way to pressure families into compliance. We, the affirmative team, strongly believe that this statement is true. Today, as the first speaker, I'll be talking to you about how exclusion harms early development centres, how better alternatives already exist, and how the policy violates the principle of universal education access. Our second speaker will be talking about how it punishes families that are already struggling, how early exclusion means lifelong setbacks, and how it creates a culture of shame and stigma. Our third speaker will rebut and sum up our team's case. I'm going to discuss 3 points. My first point is how the exclusion harms early development centres. According to South Australian Public Health Amendment Bill 2020, the no jab, no play policy requires children to be fully vaccinated to enrol in the early childhood education and care services, unless they have a valid medical exemption. This then causes enrolment loss. If some families are reluctant towards vaccinations or aren't correctly informed about vaccinations, then kindies and early development centres lose enrolments. When there's low enrollment, it leads to less funding and fewer staff hours. This means that kindies face financial strain. A video titled Preschools Experience Drop in Enrollments Over No Jab, No Play by ABC News Australia highlighted that some preschools experienced significant criticism and a noticeable drop in enrollments because of the implementation of the no jab, no play policy. Educators stated concerns about turning away families and long-term impact on early learning access. If we want a future with thriving childcare centres, this policy must be abolished before exclusion leads to families losing both education and employment. Now to my second point. My second point is how there are far better alternatives rather than the no jab, no play policy. Why are we opting towards a solution that promotes exclusivity and causes more harm than it does good? Instead of punishing, we could invest in strategies that actually work. An article, The Conversation Hour, recommends alternatives such as a reminder and recall systems, which can help parents stay on track without resorting to exclusion, or catch-up vaccine programs could be offered to provide flexibility and second chances, encourage vaccines, and promote campaigns like Love, Protect, Vaccinate. This then helps build trust, loyalty through educating families. In 2023, a study titled Frontiers in Public Health also argues how there are better alternatives such as mobile vaccination clinics to improve access, culturally tailored, informing, and empathetic engagement with hesitant parents. Yet, despite all these proven alternatives, why are we reaching for the most harmful one, exclusion? My third and final point is how the policy violates the principle of universal education access. Education is no reward, it's a right. Somehow, the no jab, no play policy turns early learning into a conditional privilege. It denies access to children whose families face barriers to vaccination. This directly contradicts the principle of universal education access. The principle states that every child deserves an opportunity to gain education, regardless of their background or circumstance. According to UNICEF, Every child has the right to learn, regardless of who they are or where they live. But the no jab, no play policy punishes children for factors often beyond their control, like lack of transport or limited healthcare access. It doesn't solve the problem, it deepens inequality. The Australian Human Rights Commission reinforces this in its Child's Rights reports, stating that access to education is protected under the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. So if education is meant to be universal, why are we publishing policies that exclude the very children who need it most? Shouldn't we be protecting public health over privilege? So, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, the no jab, no play policy should be abolished as it harms early development centres, it already has many proven alternatives, and it violates the policy of the universal education access. So let's pave the way for our future generations and abolish this policy. Thank you.
I now call upon the first negative speaker, Bethany Whitman.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. The topic for our debate is that the South Australia's no jab, no play policy should be abolished. We, the negative team, strongly believe this statement is false. We agree with the definition given by the affirmative team. Today, I will show how critical the no jab, no play policy is for ensuring equity of access for all under 5s to attend early childcare settings and supporting their growth in school readiness. I will also show how the policy is more important than individual choice and how public health relies on collective action to protect vulnerable children. Our second speaker will go on to show how the policy ensures trust in South Australia's public health system by reducing cost, and how the no jab, no play policy protects public health and vulnerable children by keeping coverage high enough to prevent dangerous outbreaks. Our third speaker will rebut the opposition and summarise our team's case. Before I get into my points, I will rebut the points raised by the affirmative team. The first affirmative speaker says that it denies children access to early education. In fact, the opposite is true. Outbreaks close entire centres, denying all children access. Removing the no jab, no play policy would cause more disruption. Outbreaks particularly harm Indigenous and disadvantaged children who benefit most from consistent attendance. The WHO and OECD and Nobel Prize-winning economics James Heckman show the highest returns on investment come from uninterpreted early childhood education. Vaccines ensure this access. The right to education must be balanced with the right to safety. Allowing unvaccinated children risks everyone's access. They also argued that education that voluntary approaches in educational campaigns could deliver the same results. This is not supported by evidence. The UK, which relies on voluntary uptake, suffered its largest measles outbreak in over a decade, with over 2,600 cases in a single year. In contrast, countries with firm enrollment-linked policies, like France and Italy and Australia, have seen immediate, sustained increases in vaccination rates, reducing outbreak risk and healthcare costs. And now to my first point. The no jab, no play policy is critical to ensuring safe and fair access for all under 5s in early childcare, which builds the foundation for school readiness and long-term success. Research is clear. Early childhood education is not a luxury. It is essential for learning, development, and life outcomes. But attendance is necessary. When children attend consistently, they build strong foundations for literacy, numeracy, social skills, and well-being. This is where vaccination matters. It protects not just individual health, but consistent attendance. A 2018 study by the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare found that children missing more than 10 days a year fall behind significantly in literacy and numeracy. Outbreaks of measles, flu, or whooping cough can close whole centres, disrupting learning for every child. The no jab, no play policy underpins attendance, keeping vaccination rates high. It ensures all children can attend safely, learn consistently, and thrive. Without it, outbreaks and exclusions widen the very inequalities early education is meant to close, and that's why this policy must remain. And now to my second point, that the policy is more important than individual choice, and how public health relies on collective action to protect vulnerable children. Public health relies on collective action, and protecting children is more important than individual choice. Vaccination is not like diet or exercise. It's never just a personal choice. If one child is unvaccinated, it endangers every child, teacher, and parent that they meet. The evidence is clear. When measles vaccination rates in Europe fell by just 5%, more than 100,000 cases and over 200 deaths followed. Australia is no exception. Without policies like no jab, no play, vaccination rates could fall below the 95% needed for herd immunity, allowing measles, polio, and whooping cough to return. We've already seen outbreaks like Sydney's spike in whooping cough in 2019 tied to unvaccinated children. Personal choice has limits when it risks others' lives. So, Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen, this policy is about both the equity of access for all under 5s and incentivizing the responsibility for collective action. Thank you.
I call upon the second affirmative speaker, Anisha Kani.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. The topic for our debate is that South Australia's no jab, no play policy should be abolished. We, the affirmative team, strongly believe that this statement is true. The first speaker from the negative team has stated the public approves of no jab, no play. Majority support doesn't justify harmful policy, even with support from communities. From studies from BMC, I quote, reveals concerns about coercion, stigma, and unintended consequences, unquote. Public health should be guided by evidence-based outcomes, not just popular opinions. She has also mentioned it protects children. Excluding children does not eliminate risks. Outbreaks can still occur from visitors, staff, and vaccinated children, since no vaccine is 100% effective. In 2023, a New South Wales health report noted that measles and pertussis outbreaks have still occurred despite vaccination rates above 95% in most communities, because vaccines are not 100% protective. Today I'll be talking to you about 3 points. My first point is how it punishes families who are already struggling. Excluding children from early age sets them back lifelong, and it creates a culture of shame and stigma. Our third speaker will rebut and sum up our team's case. Now to my first point. Many parents rely on childcare so they can work or study, and when their unvaccinated child is excluded, they are left with no affordable alternatives. Unlike wealthier families who can pay for private care, parents who are disadvantaged may be forced to give up their jobs or education, trapping them in a cycle of financial burden. In a study conducted by BMC Public Health in 2024, in Western Australia's no jab, no play policy found that parents who did not vaccinate their children reported greater financial and emotional impacts compared to those who did vaccinate. Those consequences included lost employment, reduced work and study. Instead of offering support, guidance and practical solutions, the government imposes punishment, making life harder for families who often need help the most. Ultimately, no jab, no play creates more division, increases inequality, and punishes innocent children for decisions that are way out of their control. Rather than excluding families, we should be finding ways to include them and provide real support that improves both health and education outcomes for each and every child. Now to my second point. My second point is the no jab, no play policy has created a culture of shame and stigma around families who don't vaccinate. Instead of encouraging open discussion or providing support, it labels parents as irresponsible and shows that their children are unsafe. Not only does this isolate families from their communities, but it also makes them feel judged, excluded, and unwelcomed in public spaces like childcare and preschool. The children who have no say in the matter are the ones who suffer the most, facing exclusion, missing out on opportunities, and the risk of being treated differently from teachers and peers. A mixed method study conducted in Western Australia 2024, stated by SSM Science Direct, I quote, surveyed 261 parents and conducted in-depth interviews. It was found that parents who chose not to vaccinate experienced significantly higher levels of emotional impact, including feelings of stigma, discrimination, and social exclusion, unquote. Now to my third point. Excluding children who are not vaccinated from early education sets them back. The early years are the most important stage for a child's growth, not just academically, but socially and emotionally. In preschool and childcare, children learn how to interact with others, build up confidence, and develop basic skills they need to succeed in later years. But when a child is denied these opportunities, they enter primary school behind their peers. And that gap doesn't just close on its own, it follows them through schooling and even into adulthood. Research from Queensland using the Australian Early Development Census showed that higher preschool attendance is linked to significantly lower rates of development vulnerabilities such as emotional challenges, social difficulties, and adapting trouble in school. Rather than helping children thrive, no jab, no play risks setting them back before they even have a chance to begin. So, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, we the affirmative team believe that SA no jab, no play policy should be abolished. Thank you.
I call upon the second negative speaker, Harry Allison.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. The topic for tonight's debate is that South Australia's no jab, no play policy should be abolished. We, the negative team, firmly argue that this policy should not be abolished. Before I get into my points, I'll rebut the points raised by the affirmative team's first and second speakers. The second speaker said that the no jab, no play policy discriminates against disadvantaged families. This is false because outbreaks harm disadvantaged families disproportionately. When children fall ill, parents miss work, healthcare costs rise, and learning is disrupted. Governments already provide free vaccines and run outreach to address barriers. The solution is not support, not weakening safety standards. For Indigenous children in particular, equity means safe, consistent attendance. Allowing outbreaks is the real inequity. The first speaker said that education is a right, not a privilege. This is false because education is only meaningful if it's safe. A child's right to attend must not override another child's right to be protected from preventable disease. Newborns, immune-suppressed children, Indigenous children, they have rights too. No jab, no play upholds their right to attend without fear of outbreaks. Outbreaks deny access to more children than no jab, no play ever could. Our first speaker showed how critical the no jab, no play policy is for ensuring equity of access for all under fives to attend early childcare settings, and how the policy is more important than individual choice. Tonight, as second speaker, I will talk about how the policy stops dangerous outbreaks by protecting the community by keeping vaccination rates high, ensuring herd immunity. And I will conclude by convincing you that the policy strengthens trust in South Australia's health system by preventing dangerous outbreaks that far outweigh the costs of enforcing the policy, taking money away from other services. And now to my first point. The no jab, no play policy stops dangerous outbreaks by protecting the community and keeping vaccination rates high, creating a herd immunity. We know how quickly disease can spread. According to the World Health Organization, a single person with measles can affect up to 90% of unvaccinated people nearby. Just one unvaccinated child in a preschool could trigger an outbreak, putting dozens of vulnerable children at risk of hospitalization or worse. The only way to prevent this is through herd immunity. Experts tell us that diseases like measles require over 95% vaccination coverage to stop spreading. When coverage dips below that point, outbreaks follow. We don't have to look far in proof. In England, just this year, measles cases exploded to more than 2,600, with over 40% of cases in children under 5 years old. These outbreaks were concentrated in communities with lower vaccination rates. But the evidence also shows that the policy makes a difference. In Victoria, when no jab, no play was introduced in 2016, immunisation rates for young children rose above 95%, above the herd threshold. This is not abstract theory. The policy directly prevented outbreaks and protected children. No jab, no play is not about limiting parental choice. It is about preventing suffering. Children don't get a choice. We do, and our choice should always be to keep them safe. The policy must remain. And now to my final point. The no jab, no play policy strengthens trust in South Australia's health system because it prevents dangerous outbreaks that will cost far more, both economically and socially, than enforcing the policy. Vaccines are widely recognised and are the most cost-effective public health measures ever developed. According to the World Health Organization, for every dollar spent on immunisation, governments save many more in avoided hospital admissions, treatments, and long-term care. Every other mainland state in Australia has introduced a no jab, no play policy because the evidence is clear. The cost of outbreaks is immense, while the cost of prevention is minimal. Research from the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare shows that hospitalisation for a single case of measles can cost thousands of dollars, while larger outbreaks can run into the millions, diverting money from the other essential health services. In one 2011 outbreak in Western Sydney involving just 26 measles cases, the Public Health Unit incurred substantial costs in contact tracing and containment. There are hundreds of similar examples, all of these cost avoidable. The cost of enforcing no jab, no play in South Australia is minimal. Removing the policy will make SA an outlier, risk lowering vaccination rates, and send confusing messages to families. No jab, no play is cost effective, it protects children, and it preserves confidence in our health system. Tonight, therefore, the SA no jab, no play policy should not be abolished. Thank you.
I call upon the third affirmative speaker, Vian Francisco.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. The topic for our debate is that South Australia's no jab, no play policy should be abolished. We, the affirmative team, believe that this statement is undeniably true. The first negative speaker has tried to tell you that the no jab, no play policy protects attendance, which is crucial to a child's development. This is incorrect. According to the no jab, no play policy itself, the specific children who do not comply will be excluded from schools, preventing attendance. In addition to what our first speaker said, according to the Universal Access to Kindy SA, children are the ones who suffer the consequences of the no jab, no play policy. These children did nothing wrong, yet they suffer more than the parents or guardians who are responsible for the immunization. The young children are then denied access to all childhood services as a consequence for not being immunized. The Department for Child Protection, Public Health Association of Australia, and the Royal Australian College of Physicians outlined these concerns in their respective South Australian public consultation submission in 2019. In addition to what a second speaker has said, it states, the growth and development of children in early childhood must remain the priority of all governments. This includes a specific focus on access to and affordability of early childhood education, which itself confers long-term health benefits. Lack of access to early childhood education is highly detrimental. The no jab, no play policy does not protect children nor their attendants. It instead punishes and denies them access to education. The second negative speaker has tried to tell you that education is not a right. This is wrong because education is a right that we are fortunate to have access to. Not everyone in the world has that right. Many people all over the world, especially children in Africa, suffer from the lack of education. And it is undeniable that we have that right and we should be fortunate of it. They have also said that it reduces the cost of treating preventable diseases. This is incorrect. The vaccines can potentially offer substantial economic benefits by treating the cost of preventable diseases. It is essential to consider that the economic burden of vaccination policies, especially when they are perceived as coercive or overreach, could lead to unintended consequences. The coercive vaccination policies that are a result of the no jab, no play policy, such as the penalties for non-vaccination or the exclusion of children from education, could create inequalities in access to healthcare. Families with lower socioeconomic conditions, especially in rural areas and remote areas of South Australia, may face barriers to healthcare access, making it increasingly difficult to vaccinate their children. This could lead to increased strain on the healthcare system in the long term due to increased healthcare disparities. South Australia Health also states that although vaccines are an important tool in public health, they're not infallible. Even with high vaccination coverage, the efficacy of some vaccines can diminish over time, and vaccine-preventable diseases, like measles, have seen resurgences in Australia, particularly when the vaccine uptake falls below optimal levels or when the immune system response of individuals begins to wane. With resurgences, the cost would increase instead of decrease. They have also said that it protects public health. This is inaccurate. While SA's no jab, no play public policy aims to increase vaccination rates, it is not the most effective or sustainable way to achieve long-term public health protection. Education and community outreach is a better alternative and more effective in the long run. According to an article in the National Library of Medicine titled Increasing Vaccine Confidence Through the Parent in Education and Empowerment Using Clear and Comprehensible Communication, it is imperative that parents vaccinate their children on time, every time. To end, providers must seek to increase vaccine confidence through parent education and empowerment using clear and comprehensible communication. By focusing on educating parents about the risks of vaccine-preventable diseases and benefits of immunization, rather than simply mandating vaccination or access to childcare, ESSEC could promote higher vaccination rates in a less confrontational and more collaborative way. In addition to what our first speaker has said, research done by Australian National University shows that education campaigns and community engagement programs in SA have been successful in addressing vaccine hesitancy, particularly in rural areas where the no jab, no play policy has been controversial. Educating parents and providing them with accurate, non-judgmental information about vaccinations has been proven to be effective in increasing vaccine uptake. Our first speaker spoke to you about how the policy excludes young children, thus harming early development centres, how better alternatives exist, and how the policy violates the principles of university education access. Our second speaker has told you that it punishes families in difficult situations, how early exclusion means lifelong settlebacks, and how it creates a culture of shame and stigma. So, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, instead of the no jab, no play policy protecting children, it instead causes harm to the children and their families that could affect them in the long term. It isolates and excludes them. We should not be denying children access to their education. Thank you.
I call upon the third negative speaker, Oliver Matthews.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen. The topic for our debate is that the South Australian no jab, no play policy should be abolished. As we have robustly shown in our string arguments, the negative team believes that this statement is false. Before I summarise, I'd like to rebut some points made. The second speaker made a point that it infringes on parental freedom and choice. Personal choice ends where it harms others. Vaccination is different from lifestyle choices like diet or exercise because the disease is spread to the wider community. Seatbelt laws, road rules and drink driving limits also restrict choice, but the risk to others is too great. Vaccination works in the same way. One unvaccinated child can infect dozens of others. Public health is about balancing an individual right with a collective responsibility. Vulnerable children cannot choose and they rely on us. The third speaker mentioned that there is an administrative burden or a cost of enforcement. The cost of enforcement is tiny compared to the outbreak costs. A single measles outbreak in Washington state cost $4.8 million and 8,000 staff hours. A Melbourne outbreak cost $10,000 just for contact tracing. Record immunisation is already a part of enrolment. This is a standard practice, not a huge extra burden. Prevention is always cheaper than crisis response. The second speaker brought up that it punishes children for their parents' decision. The no jab, no play policy does not punish children, it protects them. Vulnerable kids with cancer or suppressed immunity also don't choose their circumstances, yet they are the ones that are put at risk. Allowing unvaccinated children into centres punishes all the others by increasing the chance of closures, illness and lost learning time. The second speaker and third speaker said that public trust is undermined by coercion. Public trust comes from knowing policies and are consistent, evidence-based and protect the vulnerable. That's why every other mainland state has the no jab, no play policy. Trust is lost when the government allows a preventable outbreak. Parents trust the system because their children are safe at school, not because diseases are circulating. Coercion is the wrong framing. The no jab, no pay policy is about accountability. Parents can still choose, but not at the expense of the whole community. The second speaker said that outbreaks are rare anyways. Outbreaks do happen when vaccination drops. England in 2024 had 2,600 measles cases, 40% in under 5s, in communities with lower vaccination. In Australia, Sydney in 2019 recorded its highest whooping cough cases in nearly a decade, many linked to unvaccinated children. Herd immunity is fragile. Diseases spread fast once they return, and measles can infect 90% of unvaccinated contacts. The first speaker said that it punishes disadvantaged families. Vulnerable children are those who most need protection from outbreaks. Early childhood education without herd immunity puts them at greater risk. Nobel Prize-winning economist James Heckelman found that the highest return investment from early childhood education comes from vulnerable children, but only if it is safe and accessible. The no jab, no play policy guarantees that. Disadvantage is a compound when outbreaks force absences. Removing this policy worsens its inequality and doesn't fix it. The first speaker and the second speaker said that public health should not be tied to education. Childcare and preschools are among the highest risk environments for disease spread. Linking vaccination to enrolment is logical because this is where herd immunity matters. Other states such as Victoria, New South Wales, Queensland and WA have all adopted the no jab, no pay for this exact reason, because schools and childcare centres are where outbreaks do the most damage. The first speaker and the third speaker said that access to education is more important. Outbreaks are the real barrier to access. If disease is spread in childcare centres, whole classes or centres must close, removing access for all children, not just a few. Our first speaker, Bethany, showed that the South Australian no jab, no play policy must remain because it is critical for ensuring the equity of access for all children under 5. Safe access to early childhood education supports growth, school readiness and lifelong outcomes, particularly for our most vulnerable children. Our second speaker, Harry, convinced you that the no jab, no play policy stops dangerous outbreaks of vaccine-preventable diseases by ensuring herd immunity, and that it strengthens trust in South Australia's health system by preventing costly outbreaks that would otherwise drain resources from other essential services. So, Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen, we the negative team are resolute that the no jab, no play policy should be abolished. Keeping the no jab, no play policy is not only prudent, it is an essential safeguard for South Australians. Let's keep kids in school and keep disease out. Thank you.